Bum 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 bum. Sing it. All right, everybody, come on in here. By now, I know you're reaching for your coffee or your delicious beverage of some other form. Now, many of you know that I sometimes have an associate on here. His name is Dale. Some of you have seen Dale. Well, Dale has been upgraded. But first, let's have a sip, a simultaneous sip of coffee. So I go to my mailbox yesterday, and I've got somebody had anonymously sent me a package. And the anonymous package had this in it. It's a little Halloween beard called the Fake Chic Beard. So let's just say Dale got an upgrade. Not bad, huh? Doesn't stick on very well. I might still have to use my finger. Let me take this off until I need it. So thank you to probably whoever sent that is on this Periscope. So thank you for your pendulette. Thank you for the beard upgrade. I still think this is funnier, but I'll try using this one for now. All right, so today's topic was I had to have a critic this morning on Twitter. I always have lots of critics on Twitter. But this one is David J. Roth, and he decided to comment on my comment about gun control. And he says, sarcastically, and I must read it as Dale. So this is David J. Roth. He says in his profile that he's a sports writer. Now, I know what a sport is, S-P-O-R-T, but I don't know what a S-P-O-R-P-S writer is. But he's a sports writer, he says. And he says to me sarcastically, he says, "Hi, I'm Scott Adams, creator of the 1990s workplace comic Dilbert. Today I'd like to talk to you about how I would prevent school shootings." Because he's using sarcasm. Sarcasm is very funny. I love it when people use sarcasms, especially if they own turtles. He says he owns a turtle. I think he owns a cat too. He's a little quiet on the cat. But turtles, he's all about the turtles. He loves the turtles. So Scott Adams responded to his hilarious sarcasm, in which I'll read it again, because it's so funny. It's so funny. I'm going to read it again. "Hi, I'm Scott Adams, creator of the 1990s workplace comic Dilbert. Today I'd like to talk to you about how I would prevent school shootings." It's funny because people who are highly successful in one field have nothing to say about topics which everybody in the world is talking about. So I responded, thank you, Dale. So I responded to his clever put down with one sentence. I said, "First day on Twitter?" Because what is Twitter except a bunch of unqualified people with opinions? That's the entire service. How long has he been on Twitter without noticing that the entire service, all of Twitter, all tens of millions, hundreds of millions, whatever it is, number of users, all it is unqualified people with opinions. That's all it is. But he hasn't noticed yet. So apparently if you're a sports writer, you don't notice. But what I wanted to talk about was the general sense of it. I've noticed that there's something called what I call the loser philosophy. Now, the loser philosophy is sort of the little engine that couldn't. And the belief here is that unless you're carefully trained in a sport, not a sport, or a sport, unless you're carefully trained on something, you can't have an opinion on it. Now, I get the general sense that if you're not a doctor, you probably shouldn't be diagnosing people. You know, if you're not a climate scientist, maybe you shouldn't have an opinion on the details of climate science anyway. So there's some grain of truth in the fact that experts know more than non-experts, right? Well, there's more than a grain of that. But the fact is, there are so many examples in our world in which an unqualified person has succeeded where qualified people maybe wouldn't have. Here's some examples of unqualified people. So these are people who have never done the thing that they ended up doing. Steve Jobs, totally unqualified until he was. How about Elon Musk? He made a car company. So how does that make him like NASA? Just because he's good at making PayPal, that doesn't mean he'd be good at making a Tesla. Oh yeah, but he was. Just because he could do PayPal and just because he could make a Tesla, that doesn't mean he could make a rocket. Oh, I guess he can. Well, just because he can make a PayPal and just because he can make a Tesla and just because he can make a rocket better than the government, that doesn't mean he can build tunnels under the ground that are hyperloops, except that he probably can. And likewise, if you've got an individual who's a successful real estate developer, just because he's a successful real estate developer, that doesn't mean he can write a best-selling book. Well, okay, he did write a best-selling book. But just because he wrote a best-selling book and he's a real estate developer, that doesn't mean he can be a top reality TV star, except that he was. Well, just because he's a real estate developer and he had a best-selling book and he was a reality TV star, that doesn't mean he could run for president with no experience and suddenly become the leader of the entire country, except that he did. So the loser philosophy imagines that you have to stay in your lane. Don't get out of your lane. That's not allowed. No, just stay in your lane. Just do the things that won't get you in trouble. Don't take any risks. Don't embarrass yourself. My God, don't embarrass yourself. So if I could make one generalization about the difference between the left and the right, I use different terms, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, but let's just say the left and the right. Here's a defining generic difference. The people on the left are allowing shame and embarrassment to be their guiding principle. Think about that. When the left criticizes Trump, it seems like they focus their criticisms on him embarrassing himself, embarrassing the country, embarrassing them. You can't talk like that. You shouldn't talk like that. You shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't be that kind of a person. Stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. So that's the left. Here's the right. Well, he might have done some awful things, but he doesn't seem to be apologizing for it. We kind of like that. Because you know what? Everybody does some terrible things, and wouldn't you like to live in a world where you didn't have to apologize for everything? Do you always have to apologize for everything? Do I need to control my life based on your embarrassment? Why does your sense of shame and your sense of embarrassment have some kind of control on my life? Because this fellow, David J. Roth, with his loser philosophy, he's actually taking time out of his day to tell me I should deal with some kind of sense of embarrassment to stay in my lane. Do you know where my life would be if I followed advice like that? The first time I decided to try to become a famous cartoonist with no experience whatsoever? None. No experience. No professional experience. Well, you can imagine that people suggested to me that I keep my day job. Right? When I started restaurants, people said that. Almost everything I've done. So I have a best-selling book on life philosophy, a best-selling book on politics and persuasion, a best-selling book on business, and a best-selling book on religious philosophy. Now, all of those things were very successful commercial endeavors. Should I not have done any of them because I was successful as a cartoonist? David J. Roth thinks so. He thinks I need to stay in my lane and only do the things that I am trained to do. So I would say if you can master the ability to not be guided by other people's sense of what you should be doing and other people's sense of personal shame that they want to project on you and other people's sense of defeatism, other people's sense of low self-esteem, other people's sense of, lack of confidence. Those people are not you. And their feelings of shame and embarrassment that they're trying to project on you to control you and to keep you in your lane, you can just ignore. You can just ignore. So instead, I recommend, as opposed to the loser philosophy that says, no, you can only do the things that you went to school for, only stay in your lane. The winner philosophy, and by the way, David J. Roth, I did write a book on this topic, and it wasn't about cartooning. I recommend the talent stack. Those people who combine talents, if they combine the right kinds of talents, are quite mobile across fields. President Trump has done this. He has an insane number of skills that he's not the best in the world at, but he's really good. I talked about this a lot, right? He's not the smartest guy, but he's really smart. He's not the best business strategist, maybe, but he knows business strategy. He's not the most persuasive person in terms of the specific skills of persuasion. But when you put it all together with all of his other things, his appetite for risk, his big personality, his willingness to speak in public, and his imperviousness to shame, they become this insanely powerful talent stack that has allowed him to move from one field to another to another. And now we're watching him be. Already, I think you would agree that if he did nothing else, and I think he will do more, but if President Trump did nothing more, he probably will already be the person who did the most to bring people together on guns. Right? You're already seeing that. We don't know where that's going to go, but you can already see that his talent stack, his specific set of skills that he brought to the presidency, do give him a flexibility that other people just don't have. You're seeing people already write, oh my God, President Trump is the only person who could do this with guns. He is the only person we've had as president who could make a big breakthrough in guns, healthcare, immigration. And the reason is his talent stack is not like anything we've ever seen, maybe never will see. All right. Somebody said, how do you overcome shame? Here's how you do it. Some of it probably is how you're born, right? So I would imagine that if human capabilities are always, spread across some kind of a curve where most people are average, but some people are really good at it, and some people will never be good at it, whatever the skill is. So withstanding shame is probably a similar thing. There's a big part of it that is learned behavior, but there must be some of it you're just born with. Some people just have thicker skin. I took the Dale Carnegie course. I've talked about this before. Now, the Dale Carnegie course, they have several different courses that teach slightly different things. Some of them teach you how to speak in public. And that's one of the classes I took, taught you how to speak in public. Now, the biggest skill you have to learn, and in fact the only thing that Dale Carnegie teaches you, is how to withstand embarrassment. So shame, embarrassment, they're all kind of connected here. And the way that they do it is they just have you do it over and over in front of the class. So they just say, all right, we're all in this class, now let's embarrass each other. Let's embarrass ourselves in front of each other until we realize that it didn't hurt us. So what Dale Carnegie does is they make you continually embarrass yourself. Now, you're not trying to embarrass yourself most of the time. Most of the time, they just say, can you go give a speech in front of the class? And you're not good at it. So giving a speech in front of strangers when you're not good at it is pretty high anxiety, as somebody said. It's embarrassing. You feel shameful, if you did a bad job. But now imagine doing it like twice a week in front of the same class and watching all of the other people get up and then embarrass themselves too. What you have is a whole bunch of people who have embarrassed themselves in front of each other, let's say 20 people times, 20 times. So you've seen 400 examples of people doing embarrassing things. And then here's the lesson. As soon as they walk off the stage and they sit down in their chair with the rest of the people in the audience, it's over. It doesn't follow them home. And that's the lesson. You learn that the way you feel about a situation doesn't follow you. It doesn't affect your body. It doesn't touch you. And you can learn to separate who you are at the moment, who you are in general, and just sort of solidify that image of yourself and know that the embarrassment, the shame, the whatever happened, the thing that bothered you, it just doesn't have to follow you. So the answer to how do you get over shame and embarrassment is practice. But it has to be a dedicated practice in which you put yourself in situations where you are guaranteed to be embarrassed. So the trick is not to avoid embarrassment. You want to put yourself in situations where you have lots of it. Those of you who have been watching me do these periscopes from the beginning, you probably saw that they were very different at first. And I would say that a lot of the early ones were just embarrassing, but not in a way that bothered me or followed me home. So I would do something on camera and it would just be terrible. I'd forget to put on my microphone. I'd blow my nose. I'd say something stupid. I'd lose my place. Sometimes I'm just talking and I forget what my point was and I just stop talking and change the subject. You've probably all seen me do that. Now, all of these things would be deeply embarrassing to someone who had not spent a lot of dedicated time trying not to be bothered by embarrassment. Karaoke, that's a good idea. Yeah, go to a karaoke bar if you want to try to get over embarrassment. So having being hardened to embarrassment and the potential for shame, it is a superpower. It's a very important part of the talent on your talent stack. Now let's drink to that. Let's drink to an end of shame. Now, it also helps to be good at something. So here's my other advice. Everybody should try to be good at something. So find something that you have a natural, maybe a little natural talent for, that you also enjoy doing enough to practice. So I think everybody should try to find at least one thing that they're good at, because your self-image can be very much benefited by knowing you're the kind of person who, if you spend your time practicing something. That's interesting. I've got a user I can't block. I've never seen that before. Yeah, whoever this is who keeps tweeting something about child porn fantasies, I can't block that person. I don't know what that's all about. I can call them up, but the block button doesn't work. It could be that they're getting blocked already automatically, and I got there too late. So here again, I've lost my train of thought in public. So I've got 1,200 people watching me live and watching me lose my train of thought in front of you while I'm, the center of attention. Does that embarrass me? Nope. Should it? I don't know. I don't care. I don't care a bit. But here's one of the things that Dale Carnegie teaches you. This is the most important lesson probably from Dale Carnegie, that the feeling that you're experiencing inside your head is completely different from the feeling that the audience is having, the observer. The observer's sense of you is completely different than the one you have in your head. And once you learn that, that's very powerful, right? So right now I'm thinking, well, this could be embarrassing that I just forgot my train of thought in front of 1,200 people. But I'm also completely cognizant, because of the Dale Carnegie course, that as long as I'm relaxed, so will you be. In other words, you're not going to care one bit that I lost my train of thought. You don't care one bit, right? I was the only one who cared, but I have enough experience to know that you don't. So the key there was not what I thought. The key was knowing that you don't care. And that makes me relaxed. Because if you don't care, I don't have to care either. So I can just give you a relaxed presentation, and you'll be fine with that. Usually the audience cares if you look like you're having a good time. If you get that part right, the audience is going to be pretty happy. And that's the part Dale Carnegie helps you with. It allows you to enjoy your moment of attention without the embarrassment part even being part of your thinking. So what you're saying is you give zero shits. No, I'm not saying that. But let me clarify that. That was a good comment, because it gave me a chance to show a difference. Not giving a shit is slightly different. So not giving a shit is just not giving a shit. All right? And maybe that, there are times when that's useful too. What I'm talking about is understanding how the other person is thinking. So that's the opposite of not giving a shit. So when I said, I lost my train of thought, but I knew that the audience wouldn't care as long as I didn't act bothered by it, which I'm not, then what I'm really doing is I am giving a shit about what you're thinking. It's the opposite of not giving a shit. I'm very much giving a shit, but it's about what you're thinking instead of what I'm thinking. That's the difference. So I'm not giving a shit about how I feel, because it's not valid. If I felt embarrassed or shamed, those would not be useful, productive feelings. So I just don't give a shit about them. But I totally care what all of you are thinking, which is why I know that the best solution is to act like I'm not bothered, because that's what's best for you. All right? So when somebody said it's learning how to not give a shit, no, it's very much not that. But I can see why you think that if I don't explain it well. It's not giving a shit about your own sense of shame and embarrassment. And so in that limited sense, yes. But I very much care about what you're thinking, and being confident is part of satisfying that. Do more scopes on this, and also visualization. Well, I can do visualization right now. Why not? This is an interactive media, and I am greatly influenced by your comments. Visualization. So you're probably talking about affirmations, but you may be talking about visualization in general. In the world of persuasion, I always talk about the visual persuasion dominates, because we're visual creatures. So if you've got a good picture, a good image, or even if you can describe a picture in people's head, such as, we're going to build a wall, it's going to be 10 feet taller. Those are pictures in your head. So pictures in your head or pictures in the real world are very, very persuasive compared to most other forms of persuasion. But in terms of guiding your own life, in terms of affirmations, that's the method where you write down or repeat 15 times, and the 15 is just a random number, but 15 times a day, where you want to head. Such as you might say, I, Scott Adams, will have a best-selling book. So that's a typical form. You just state who you are and where you're gonna head. Now the problem with affirmations is if you get too specific, that can be problematic because it might limit the number of ways you could succeed. So I would rather that people say that you'll affirm that you will make money or get wealthy, as opposed to affirming that you'll get a specific raise or a specific thing will happen or you'll win the lottery. Don't be too specific. Just generally the things that you want. You want love, wealth, health, those things. So imagining and visualizing the thing you want may have some impact on programming yourself to notice your opportunities in the environment. It might make you a little more fortified to work toward them. It might make you a little more focused. It might make you notice things that you wouldn't do. It might make you act a little differently in subtle ways. Nobody knows exactly whether or not affirmations work in some kind of scientific sense, but anecdotally, lots of people say they've had good experience. Now, that's partly because the people who had a bad experience don't mention it. So you have to be careful. Be careful of not assuming, you should not assume that affirmations are some kind of magic. All I can tell you is that when people focus on goals, they're almost certainly more likely to accomplish them. So the affirmations are a specific technique to guarantee that some part of your day you're focusing where you want to head. And at the very worst, focus is good. So, Andrew Carnegie thought it did. Okay. Is knowing what the audience is thinking a form of mind reading? Yeah, so I talk about a lot lately what I call the mind reading illusion. So the mind reading illusion is the illusion we all have that because we've observed somebody doing something that we know what's in their mind. We're usually very bad at that. And by bad at it, I mean we could be wrong half of the time. And the more emotion is involved, or the more, team sport that's involved, where you just are backing your own team, the less accurate you're going to be. Guessing what other people are thinking. But there are generalities about populations, which is different than guessing what one person is thinking. Guessing what a population is thinking is a little bit, safer. So, for example, if I said, I've decided to give free money to 100 people, if I were to say, those people seem happy that I gave them free money, well, that's not really mind reading, because anybody who gets free money is going to feel kind of happy. So there's some things that are just so obvious that are true of a general population that you can feel pretty safe to say them. Now, it would not be safe to pick any one person out of that group who got the free money and say, I know what you're thinking, one person. You're thinking you're really happy you got that money. Because there might be one person who is suspicious about the money and say, oh, now what do I have to do in return? And now I feel like, I wish this hadn't happened. It feels like a trick, right? So we'd be very bad at guessing what any one person is thinking. But it's not as hard to figure out what a population will think about, normal stuff. Now, that said, let me teach you possibly the most powerful hypnosis trick you can learn in 30 seconds. When you're trying to persuade one person, one-on-one, whether it's social media or anywhere else, it helps to state what they're thinking before they've said it. So if you say to somebody and you guess accurately, and the trick is you have to be accurate. It doesn't work if you get it wrong. But if you say, I know what you're thinking, you're going to ask me X. When you do that, it binds you to people, and people think, oh my God, this person knows what's in my mind. It's like we're one person. So guessing correctly, the correct part is the important part. If you can't guess correctly, don't even try. But you'll notice in my writing, for example, maybe you've noticed. Have you noticed that I often say, I start sentences like this, I'll say, okay, I know what you're thinking. And then I answer the question that I know they're thinking. And I know they're thinking it because I've set them up to think it. I primed them in the first part of the writing. So in other words, I'll start an argument, and then I'll get to the point where I know, because of the way I've formed the argument, that most of my readers, not everyone, but most of my readers are going to be thinking, yeah, but you forgot to mention X. Your argument is terrible because you forgot to mention X. And as soon as I have them thinking, your argument is terrible because you forgot to mention X, I add that sentence. I say, okay, I know you're wondering about X. Here's how I deal with X. If you can do that, you're in people's head in a way that regular writing does not get into heads, right? So when I talk about the talent stack, I talk about combining talents that work well together. The talent of writing goes really well with hypnosis and persuasion because you usually are writing to persuade. You may not be thinking of it that way. You might be thinking you're just giving information or something. But usually you're trying to persuade people. Even just giving them information is usually trying to persuade them. So if you can combine a writing skill with persuasion skill, you end up being a best-selling writer. Do you do seminars on this? Well, I wrote a book on it, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. I've lost your thought track this morning. Yeah. What's up with David Hog Kid always on CNN? I'll tell you what's up with the David Hog Kid who's always on CNN. He's really good on television. Have you noticed? Say what you will about that Hog, yes. Say what you will about David Hog. I don't know if he's 17 or how old he is, but he's the kid you've been seeing talking about guns on television. Say whatever you want about him. He's definitely not fake. All right, he's a real student and he's got real things to say. But I'll tell you, that kid is going somewhere. Okay, that kid has some serious talent. Did you notice one thing about that kid? He's not embarrassed. Have you noticed that he doesn't seem to operate with a sense of embarrassment? He's 17. He's well-spoken, good-looking, camera loves him, and he's not embarrassed. At 17. I'm guessing he's 17. He might be in that range somewhere. That kid's going somewhere. Everybody who says that kid is a plant, he really isn't. He is absolutely not a plant. But he is being sought because he's now a famous voice. He's become a symbol of the cause. So he'll get more TV time just for that. But he's also good on camera, and the news outlets want good content. I was watching, I don't know what it was. Was it the listening thing? Or no, I guess it was a speech. And there was another student. It was a blonde. Do I call her? I'm not sure if the right term is girl or woman, because she was maybe 17, 18. And her speech was amazing. It was so good for her age. There's some real talent coming out of this bunch of kids that's frankly quite impressive. I got suckered in on the Hog Kid. Now, what do you think I got suckered in on? I know he's coached, and I know he's being pushed in front of the cameras, even though obviously willingly. What am I being taken in by? You know, do you believe he's a crisis actor and he goes from crisis to crisis just to be on camera because he was on camera one other time? All that means is that he's a guy who doesn't mind being on camera. Scott doesn't see they're coached. I'm telling you they are coached. Don't Kathy Newman me. The kid is coached because everyone who goes on camera is coached. When I go on camera for CNN, they coach me. Did you know that, by the way? So, you know, I'm a professional. I've been on, you know, CNN and Fox News and CNNBC lots of different times. And so even as a professional, the producers talk to you before you go on about what you're going to talk to. Sometimes they'll give you an entire practice interview just to make sure that you have organized your thoughts for the kind of questions that are coming. So coaching somebody right before they go on camera is the normal way the news works. That's not unusual. You've just seen some clips of people coaching the kid, and of course, because he's that age, he's going to get a little extra coaching. None of that is unusual. That's all just normal business. Don't make more of that than it really is. So if he's given talking points, well, it is also not unusual for the producer to suggest talking points. But if the producer is doing their job, their suggestions will be based on what they already know about you. In other words, the producer is not trying to get you to say something that you would not be inclined to say. The producer is trying to get you to put it in the best words. So, you know, that's not going to change. The producers are just doing their job. They're using the kid as a tool. Yeah, but is that wrong? Is it wrong to use the kid as a tool? If the tool is educating the public, if the tool is letting us know how he feels, how the kids feel, if the tool is an eloquent spokesperson for young people, if the tool is to inform the public, if the tool is maybe to influence policy, well then yeah, he's a tool. Is that bad? So what did you folks think about the listening session? I watched some, but not all of it. And here was my feeling about it. First of all, I give it an A+, because simply showing that you are listening to the other team is very, very powerful. Very powerful. And it's what we fantasize our government is. Like what you saw with Trump in the White House with his, listening to the people's opinions, what you saw was the government operating the way you fantasized it could, which is listening to the people, getting all the opinions, and even doing it in public. So what have I been saying for the longest time about climate science? You know how I've been telling you that the way to handle the climate science disagreement is for President Trump to get them in a room and put the camera on and say, I'm just here to listen. Both sides, you talk. All right. Now you tell me why he's wrong. Okay. Now you tell me why she's wrong. Now you tell me, and just turn the cameras on. So, because there are so many, do the same thing for immigration. Immigration, there are lots of ins and outs, so it's slightly different because there are lots of subtopics within immigration. But you could pick a topic, or maybe a few that work together, and just have a conversation about it and turn the camera on. Now, and I think Greg Gutfeld said this yesterday on The Five. He said that people, mocked President Trump for coming from a reality television background. Well, you're not laughing now. It's not so funny now, is it? Because you just saw the talent stack in full form. So Trump has this reality TV talent stack, or talent, and he just merged it with his governmental experience and turned on the cameras. And he knows branding, he knows persuasion. There was a whole bunch of talent that went into that didn't look like it, right? It just looked like he was sitting there listening. It didn't look like there was a lot of talent involved, but there was a lot of talent involved. First of all, just creating the situation and understanding it was, the time and the place, and and it was the right thing to do. So it takes talent to even know what the right thing to do is. I would love to see more of that. I'd like to see it for immigration. I would like to see it for climate science. Turn the cameras on, have both teams say what they need to say, and we'll follow up. Using children to push a political agenda is an appeal to emotion. It is. But here's the thing. That's how things change. So the issue with gun control is that the cold, calculated argument wasn't going to move anything in either direction. So if somebody had shown up with statistics and said, hey, I've got some statistics on why we should make this change or not make this change, people would just say, statistics, what else you got going on today? All right? In order to affect change, you need an irrational, emotional energy. The kids have this irrational, emotional energy in spades, and because they're kids, they affect us in a different way. Adults are just far more affected by kids in this kind of context than they would be by adults. Is the media using kids as tools for their propaganda? Yes. Is that unethical? No, it is not. It is not unethical. Because here's why it's not unethical. The feelings of these kids, the raw emotions of the victims, families and stuff, that raw emotion is part of the fact base. All right. The way they feel is a fact. The fear that the survivors have and will carry with them forever is a fact. So when you hear them talking emotionally, don't think of it as, it's all emotional manipulation. It is also communicating facts. All right. When you see that dad who was in on the listening thing talking about his daughter he'll never see again who was killed, that was a fact. It was packaged in this emotional, thing, but it was an important fact. So this is one of those cases where emotionally manipulative arguments are quite ethical, in my opinion, quite ethical. And keep in mind that almost everybody involved in this discussion, you could say there are some members of the NRA or something who have cynical objectives, but pretty much everybody involved in the current discussion are serious players who want to make things better. All right. Under those situations, emotional appeals completely acceptable. Ever attended a mandatory ethics class? I have, actually. You don't think this borders on child exploitation? Well, exploitation is a word that tries to get the result in the question. In other words, the question is the answer. So if you think that it's, what do you call it, child abuse or something, the way you've asked the question is you already have the answer that you're not going to change your mind. But let me tell you, if you say, should you be, child abusing these kids and emotionally manipulating them and all that, you've sort of assumed the answer. Let me put it in non-judgmental terms. Are the children an important component of this conversation? I think they are. They're powerful. They're eloquent. They're members of society. They're important. They're important voices, I think. Thomas Wichter had the best take on David Hogg. And what was that? What was crazy Thomas Wichter? I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but Thomas Wichter, while he may sometimes be right, the credibility is not that high. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. I'm just going to say that his credibility is not that high. But he may have gotten some impressive things correct. I believe that's the case. Just reading your comments here. What do I think of John Lott? I don't know him. All right. I think we've done enough. I'm going to sign off for now. I'm going to go eat a bagel. A bagel. Let us drink to a better world. That's good stuff.